Let's look at linear inequalities, and we need to know how to graph them first on a number line. So here's some terminology. If I've got a less than or equal to x, which is less than or equal to b, that means any x value between a and b, including a, here's what I do. Let's say that this is the coordinate of point A on the number line, and this is the coordinate of point B on the number line. Since x can equal a, I'm going to put a bracket, and since it's just less than b, I'm going to put a parentheses, and then we shade everything between on the number line. Okay, so that's a graphical representation of that inequality. We also have something called interval notation, and what it does is it looks like this. We're going to put a bracket at a, comma, b, parentheses. That means all values greater than or equal to a and less than b. So now that we know how to graph them on a number line and write them in interval notation, let's do some examples. X is greater than -3. Okay, so that means x is greater than -3. On my number line, I'll put a parentheses at -3, and I will shade everything to the right of -3. And in terms of interval notation, I'll put a parentheses, -3, and since we're going out forever, we'll put infinity. Infinity is not a number, it just means it goes out forever and ever on the number line. Alright, how about this example? X is less than or equal to 5. On the number line, I'm going to put a square bracket at 5, and since x are all values less than 5, I'm going to shade to the left. Okay, in interval notation, that means everything to the left of 5 means negative infinity to 5, and it can also equal 5, so we put a square bracket. This one says x is greater than or equal to -1. So x is greater than or equal to -1, and it's less than 4. So on a number line, I will put a square bracket at -1 because x can equal -1, and I'm going to put a parentheses at 4, and we will shade everything in between. In interval notation, that will be -1 to 4. Okay, how about this? X is greater than or equal to 0. Okay, x is greater than or equal to 0, and less than or equal to 4. Alright, go away. Alright, not going to do that. So, here's our number line. Bracket at 0, and not a bracket, parentheses at 4, shade everything in between, interval notation, bracket at 0, comma, 4, parentheses. So hopefully now you understand how to write inequalities in terms of interval notation and how to graph them on the number line. Now let's solve linear inequalities and graph them and write their answers in interval notation. Okay, so I have 5 minus 3x is less than 23. So I'm going to subtract 5 from both sides. So I get -3x is less than 18. And we have to be very careful there. Whenever we multiply or divide by a negative number, that's going to change the direction of our inequality. So I'm going to divide by -3, and now I get positive x is greater than -6. Okay, on a number line, that looks like this. Parentheses at -6, and we're going to shade everything to the right, which means in interval notation, that would be -6 to infinity. This example is called a double inequality because we have something with x greater than a number and something with x less than a number. So we're going to split it up into two inequalities and solve them separately. So I'm going to subtract 4 from both sides and then divide by 3. Since I'm dividing by a positive number, well, I'm dividing by 3, so it's going to give me a -2. Since I'm dividing by a positive number, the inequality stays in the same direction. Okay, here I'm going to subtract 4 from both sides, divide by 3. Okay, so now let's put it all together. This says that x is greater than -2 and x is less than or equal to 4. So that means -2 less than x less than or equal to 4. On our number line, parentheses at -2, bracket at 4, shade everything in between. Interval notation, -2 to 4 with a bracket at 4. One more example. This is another double inequality, and before I split it up, I'm going to multiply everything by 7. So I'm going to get 7 less than or equal to -2 minus 3x less than 28. So I got rid of that denominator in one step. Now we'll split it up. 7 less than -2 minus 3x minus 2 minus 3x less than 28. Okay, I'm going to add 2 to both sides. And we're dividing by negative numbers, so I'm going to switch the inequality. So -3 is greater than or equal to x over here. I'm adding 2 to both sides, so I get 30. X is greater than, we're switching it because we're dividing by a negative, greater than -10. So when we write inequalities, we always go from the least to the greatest. So -3 is the least term, so it's going to be, -10 is the least term, so -10 is less than x is less than or equal to -3. So on a number line, that'll look like this. Parentheses at -10, bracket at -3, everything shaded in between, and interval notation, -10 to -3, including -3. And that's what you do when you're working with linear inequalities.